I have a few questions for the press, for the president, and for you. In watching Ed Henry yesterday try to get an answer from the White House on exactly what happened yesterday, what was the president doing yesterday? Why wasn't he in France with all the other leaders? The president once again blames the Secret Service. I want you to listen to this press conference yesterday and Ed Henry.
Potent form, according to you, of extremism. Why isn't it the summit on countering Islamic extremism?
Because violent extremism is something that we want to be focused on, and it's not just Islamic violent extremism that we want to counter. There are other forms of
Paris, Australia, Canada. Isn't the thread through them that it's Islamic extremism?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly those all the examples that you cite are examples of individuals who have cited Islam as they've carried out acts of violence. There's no arguing that.
You said several times we should have sent someone higher than the ambassador. I haven't
with a higher profile than the ambassador. That's correct.
Question: why didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, Ed, I've sort of tried to describe to you exactly the situation here. That we're talking about a march that came together with essentially 36 hours notice, and a march that occurred outdoors with an obviously very large number of people who participated. We are mindful anytime the president goes to a public place, or the vice president for that matter, that we don't want to, or at least we want to try to mitigate the impact that the security precautions would have on those who are participating in this public event. And there's no doubt that had the president or vice president on this very short time frame gone to participate in this event that took place outdoors with more than 1 million people in attendance, that it would have significantly impacted the ability of those who were attending the march to participate in the way that they did yesterday.
Everyone in this room acknowledges the president's safety is of utmost. It's not an issue at all. Of course his security is important, and you don't want to detract from the event. How do you explain then that the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he made it there? He's a huge target, obviously, unfortunately.
Well, I will allow the Israelis to discuss what security precautions they had in place.
Dozens of leaders from countries that are very important. They're not America, but very important.
How did they make it there?
They make it there.
Ed, you should talk to them about the security precautions they have in place. You've been to enough. Look, you have been to enough events where the president is attending a conference or a summit with other world leaders, and I think that you have seen firsthand that the security precautions that are in place for the president of the United States, this has been true of previous presidents too, are sometimes more onerous than the precautions that are put in place for other world leaders.
In the Mandela funeral, there were dozens and dozens of leaders. The American security might be more, but it comes up in short notice. Unfortunately, Mandela dies, and you wanted to be there. You made it. Well, how did that come together?
The difference with President Mandela is that there had been discussions that have been ongoing for, frankly, a number of years about the ceremony that would take place in the event of his death. And so there was a much clearer, that's right, but there was a much clearer a plan that was already in place that could be followed for executing that event on a short time frame. There obviously was nothing in place because I don't think anybody contemplated the kind of attack that we saw in Paris.
Once you said the president personally wishes he would have liked to have gone, why didn't he? What was he doing on Sunday? We haven't gotten an accounting of what the president did Sunday.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to the president about what he did yesterday.
I mean, you obviously prepared for this, and you've said many times, the most transparent administration. What was the president doing?
I guess I prepared for a lot of questions today, but I did not prepare. But
couldn't see that one coming. Couldn't see that one.
I want to go through the start at the beginning. I want to take this piece by piece. I want you to listen to what he just said. I wanted to play it all out so you could really hear it. And now let me take it apart piece by piece. Play it again from the beginning.
Potent form, according to you, of extremism. Why isn't it the summit on countering Islamic extremism?
Stop. Here's the president. He has now come out and he put a kibosh on this extremist summit until this happened. And then he said, I've got to do this extremist summit. But it's not an Islamic extremist summit. It's on violent extremism. Okay? It's on violent extremism. So are we focusing now on Islamic extremism?
Because violent extremism is something that we want to be focused on, and it's not just it's not just Islamic violent extremism that we want to counter. There are other forms of
Paris, Australia.
I'd like to know what other form.
Please let it play out.
Australia, Canada, isn't the thread through them that it's Islamic extremism?
Well, certainly those all the examples that you cite are examples of individuals who've cited Islam as they've carried out acts of violence.
Okay, got it. All right. So you've cited, how many did he say? 5? You've cited 5 different extremist activities, things that the world is very aware of. You can say Indonesian, you know exactly what you're talking about. You can say the violent extremism in Syria, and you know exactly what he's talking about. You can say the violent extremist in France, and you know what he's talking about. Canada, you know what he's talking about. Islamic extremism. Everybody in the whole world knows about that. Could you please name other violent extremist moments that the world would know about? Things that you think are equal to those events? Can you give me any examples? I can give you 2. I can give you 2. Ferguson. Would you consider that a violent extremist movement? Ferguson. Would you consider the march where they are calling for the killing of cops and then the actual execution of cops? Would you consider that a violent extremist movement? I'd like to know. Could somebody in the press follow up? Are those 2 considered violent extremist movements? May I ask, when they were trying to blow up the bridges in Cincinnati and in Ohio through Occupy Wall Street, would you consider that a violent extremist movement? Because what I would like, sir, is I would like you to be able to express to the people, who are you talking about? When you're talking about violent extreme, are there violent extremist Catholics that we don't know about? Have the Mormons all of a sudden blown up the Broadway theaters because of the Book of Mormon? Who exactly are we addressing? I think it's really important, if you're going to announce a summit, that you tell the American people, who is it you're targeting, sir? They won't do that. And they certainly will not talk about violent extremist Islam. So who is it we're talking about? Because I can guarantee you we're also not talking about Ferguson. We're not talking about the chance of kill the cops. I'm going to put wings on pigs. I can guarantee you we're not talking about those violent extremists either. So who is it we're discussing? Go on.
There's no arguing that.
You said several times we should have sent someone higher than the ambassador.
Now listen to this.
With a higher profile than the ambassador. That's correct.
Question, why didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, Ed,
Okay, stop. Oh, Pat, what was the question he just asked?
Why didn't you send? You said you should have sent somebody. Why didn't you?
Okay, so could you explain that question to me, Stu?
They sent someone, and they're looking for someone with a higher profile. And the question was, what reason did you have for not sending someone with a higher profile?
Okay, does that mean the president, or does that just mean anybody with a higher profile?
It's someone of a higher profile than the ambassador.
The ambassador. Anybody with a higher profile than the ambassador. I want you to listen how he answered the question.
Sort of tried to describe to you exactly the situation here, that we're talking about a march that came together with essentially 36 hours notice.
Okay, stop for a second. I just want you to know the United States of America is not able to respond within a 36-hour window.
To send someone to a march.
Right. It's not. We're not talking about landing jets or flying. We know we couldn't do that in Benghazi. We know we couldn't, in a 15-hour period, fly a jet off the side of an aircraft carrier and take care of some militants. But now we're not even able to put a person, not the president, a person on the ground for a march within a 36-hour window. That's how meaningless our security and our capabilities really are now. Within 36 hours, we cannot. We're the country that put a man on the moon within a decade when everyone said we couldn't do it. We can't put a man on the streets of Paris within 36 hours. But listen to what he's actually saying here.
And a march that occurred outdoors with an obviously very large number of people who participated.
Stop. Okay. So we're now outdoors. I just want to tell you the security conditions here. We're now outdoors. Okay. I've only got 36 hours. And we're outdoors, okay? So that totally changes everything. And there's a lot of French people around. Think about how insulting this answer is. If we were all gathered in the streets after 9/11, and the French president would have said, it was only a 36-hour window, and I didn't know if we could send anybody because it was outdoors, and there was a lot of Americans on the streets. Imagine how insulted we would have been. Are we all terrorists? That's what our White House just said to France. We don't know who the terrorists are. There are 1 million people out on the streets. There's a lot of people, and we were outdoors. You have 40 world leaders. What do you think? They all showed up with mall cops? Was Kevin James there with his Segway? Is that the only security they had? You had the 40 biggest leaders. Well, may I ask a question? Is the Mossad sloppy? Let me rephrase that. Does the Mossad allow people to open the front door of the prime minister's house? Is the Mossad going out and getting exotic massages? Is that the problem in France? You were going to bring the Secret Service, but with 36 hours, you weren't sure they could sober up in time? You weren't sure if you could bring them around all the French prostitutes, if they could abstain for 36 hours? Is that possibly what it was? I'm not really sure. Are you telling me that the Secret Service is lower than the Mossad? Are you telling me that the Russians take their leaders' safety less serious than we do? But wait, he goes on.
We are mindful anytime the president goes to a public place, or the vice president for that matter, that we don't want to, or at least we want to try to mitigate the impact that the security precautions would have on those who are participating in this public event.
Okay, so stop. So he just wants you to know that he was trying to make the decision, exactly what I told you they would say yesterday. He was only making this decision because he wanted everybody else to enjoy. Because when the president goes, he can't always enjoy himself because he's got so much security detail around him. The others can't enjoy. For instance, let's say, just making something up here. Let's say he has to go to a funeral. He can't just sit there with some other world leader laughing and yucking it up at the funeral and maybe taking selfies. He can't do that because the security is just far too tight for the president. He will destroy everybody else's time. For instance, when he went to Nelson Mandela, I'm sure it was security that wrecked the event for Mrs. Obama. Because I remember her being pissed off about something. It must have been all of that uber tight security that kept them in that bubble. But I digress.
And there's no doubt that had the president or vice president on this very short time frame gone to participate in this event that took place outdoors with more than 1 million people in attendance, that it would have significantly impacted the ability of those who were attending the march to participate in the way.
So he cares about Putin. He cares about all the other world leaders. He didn't want his security because he doesn't have the ability to do anything about his security at all. He just has to say, I'm going to dismiss myself from this. What a crock of crap that is. By the way, do you notice he didn't answer the question? The question was, why didn't you send somebody else lower level? He's answering for the president, who, if you want to take that answer, which I do not accept, that the Secret Service can't act within 36 hours. Bullcrap. If you want to accept that answer, that they can't act within 36 hours, the French people are all insane and terrorists, and he was just trying to not wreck everybody else's experience. The vice president does not have presidential security. The vice president's security is lower. And by the way, that wasn't even the question. Why didn't you send someone above an ambassador? That means Harry Reid. Harry Reid doesn't have that security. That means John Boehner. That means anybody anyone? Could you have sent anyone besides the ambassador? He didn't answer the question. Oh, but it gets so much worse.
They did yesterday.
Everyone in this room would acknowledge the president's safety is of utmost. It's not an issue at all. Of course his security is important, and you don't want to detract from the event. How do you explain then that the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he made it there? He's a huge target, obviously, unfortunately.
Well, I will allow the Israelis to discuss what security precautions they had in place.
Again, I just have to go back to how insulting is this? That their leaders don't count as much, that they don't take their leaders' security seriously like we take our leadership security seriously. We, of course, do. Again, nobody is going to go across the White House lawn and open up the front door and actually get inside of the White House with a gun. That's not going to happen with us. That might happen with some shoddy security for some of these other worthless countries, but not the United States of America.
Dozens of leaders from countries that are very important. They're not America, but very important.
I'm not suggesting that they aren't at all.
They make it there.
Ed, you should talk to them about the security precautions they have in place. You've been to enough. Look,
Right, because he's been to enough things and he's seen the presidential security, and the security is out of the president's control. He has absolutely no control of this whatsoever. He can't just say, damn it, I'm going. He can't do that. He's the most powerful man in the world, but he certainly can't do that. Not with a 36-hour time window, I'll tell you that right now. By the way, there is one more thing that we'll get to. I have to take a break, but there is one more thing that we have to get to. And that is the question, what did the president do? Next.
The Glenn Beck Program.